Bronze. During the summer solstice, the Grendel attempted to take control of the Scorero crossing, and had they been successful, they would have controlled all movement of land forces between Madruga and Oransarai. However, Imperial heroes were able to intervene through the Sentinel Gate and put a stop to their stratagem. Still, the Grendel control of the northern borders of Feroz presents something of a logistical problem, forcing the Empire's forces to pass through Segura to enter the territory if they do not want to face a pitched battle, attempting to attack Oransarai directly from Madruga. This does not prevent the Empire gathering a great force of Imperial soldiers in western Feroz. The Quiet Steppe armies from Segura, the Seventh Wave, and the Granite Pillar. In Morayase, the Granite Pillar set up defensive positions, while the Seventh Wave moved cautiously forward, sending dozens of small teams of practice scouts ahead of them to spy out the enemy positions. A short time later, they are joined first by the Redwind Corsairs down out of Mornwald, and then the Blackthorns out of Liathavan, passing through Karaman and Segura to end up with the other three Imperial armies in the shadow of Mora's Rock. The Granite Pillar prepare to blunt the presumed thrust of the Grendel forces, supported by more than 2,000 soldiers belonging to Highborn and Urizen warbands. The other four armies break camp and push east towards the coast and the barbarian horde. The Redwind Corsairs take the lead, possessed of a supernaturally heightened acuity that combines with their knowledge of the Brass Coast to help them predict, at least in part, the likely movements of the Grendel invaders. As with the Pillar, they are supported by independent warbands, a mix of nations, more than 1,000 in all. As the Imperial forces move, a supernatural storm moves to meet them, gathering far out to sea and sweeping in to batter the coast with torrential rain and howling winds. The tempest is indiscriminate. While it hinders the Grendel armada, it also presents significant threats to any Imperial vessels in the territory this season. The weather shakes the Grendel armada, but it does not slacken their thirst for conquest. Even as the Empire is gathering in Morayase, the Orc Marines are pushing west through Font Argenta, securing the last of the region and solidifying Greece. Perhaps their magicians recognized the subtle whisper of autumn magic in the air that stymied their plundering last season. More likely, the commanders who set their forces to raiding instead of conquering and cost the Grendel control of Font Argenta prior to the summer solstice have been replaced. The Orc Marines are not alone, however, even as the Imperial forces are preparing to engage along the contested borders of Morayase and Afariase. News comes to the Seventh Wave of Grendel ships disgorging thousands of barbarian land forces in Oransarai. As near as the scouts can piece together, part of the armada spent the last season returning to Attar and has since returned with 2 armies, perhaps 10,000 additional Grendel troops in all, or at least some of them are Grendel troops. When the Empire finally engages them, it is clear that not only orcs native to the Broken Shore are fighting in Feroz. Having swiftly regrouped from their likely turbulent sea crossing, the land forces immediately strike west for Morayase, with the support of many of the Grendel Marines. In the vanguard are warriors familiar to many of the freeborn fighters. The forces of the Naguero rush to engage the Imperial armies with wild abandon, crashing repeatedly against the soldiers attempting to push toward the coast. The Naguero once lived in Calino to the south, before being defeated by the Iron Confederacy when the Lasambrian nation collapsed. It seems they have prospered in their year or more that they have spent with their cousins on the Broken Shore. They are much revitalized and seem to burn with a terrible hatred for the Empire that translates itself into an overwhelming assault against their positions across the contested land between Orc and human-controlled territory. They are followed up by the Iron Gulls, last seen in the disastrous, for the Grendel, retreat from Spiral. Survivors of the catastrophe when the heart of Screed was roused to wakefulness, it seems they also harbour a deep anger towards the Imperial armies, albeit one that is significantly more focused than that of the Naguero. They drag with them a suite of siege engines, well prepared for the dearth of wood on the grasslands of Feroz. They have brought their catapults and siege engines with them, and clearly mean to put them to good use. Their target is Mora's Rock, the new fortification having been completed barely a month previously. While the Marines along the coast absorb the force of the Imperial attempt to liberate Feroz, the Naguero and the Iron Gulls push into Morayase. The Empire's forces manage to briefly claim some land along the border between the two forces, but they are able to hold it for only a handful of weeks before they are forced to retreat back. For their part, the Grendel launch an audacious raid against Mora's Rock. A pitched battle takes place between the granite pillar and the two Grendel armies below the walls of the fortification. The Rock takes a fair amount of damage from the attempt to storm the walls, but the Grendel are soon forced to retreat towards Oransarai, or risk being cut off from their main force. The loss of life across the territory is significant. While the Grendel Marines are concerned primarily with taking and holding the coast, and do not press into Morayase or Afariase, the Naguero seem unconcerned about casualties, relishing every opportunity to engage the Empire. For their part, the Imperial troops are supported by the Quiet Steppe, who are prepared to do whatever it takes to damage the barbarian forces, employing unorthodox but effective tactics to strike at the Orc armies from unexpected positions that allow them to target their supply trains, hospitals, and the occasional Grendel commander. It is hard to judge the effectiveness of the magical storms on the Grendel armada, but a conservative estimate suggests that well over 3,000 Grendel are slain. By contrast, the Empire estimates a little short of 3,000 soldiers have been lost to Imperial forces. The Empire makes some small gains in Oransarai and Fontargenta, but managed to hold them for little more than a handful of weeks before being forced to fall back westward. For their part, the Grendel Marines hold off the Empire attempt to reach the coast, and even manage to make some headway into Morayase, although the presence of the fortification there means they have little more than a fingerhold on the western grasslands. Worse, from the point of view of the Empire at least, they have managed to consolidate their control of the 3 eastern regions. Fontargenta is now completely under Grendel control, and as Fontargenta falls, so falls the territory. Feroz is no longer part of the Brass Coast, but the freeborn are not prepared to abandon it to the Orcs. A fortnight before the autumn equinox, messengers from the town of Afar reached the commanders of the Imperial forces defending Feroz. The Hakima of Afar are adept in the use of night magic and have been preparing for the worst. Now they plan to take advantage of a coming conjunction of the heavens that will allow them to unleash far-reaching magic across the Empire. Over the centuries, the Hakima of Afar have aided freeborn across the coast. In return, many of them signed contracts committing themselves or their in debt to the Hakima. Provided the summons comes in the correct way, these people will be bound to come to Feroz and fight the Grendel in the coming season, potentially providing a significant military strength to aid in either the defence of Afariase and Morayase, or to help the Imperial armies take back what the Grendel raiders have stolen from them. They do not need magical assistance, but they do need military assistance. The Orcs appear to have gotten wind of what they are planning. Perhaps a lucky spy spotted the magicians gathering at Afar, or perhaps the sorcerers of the Naguero or the Sky Masters of the Grendel have seen what is coming in divinations of their own. A major force of Iron Gulls and Naguero magicians are heading east across the grasslands of Afariase. They will reach Afar within the week. and while there are some Kohan protecting the Hakima, there will not be sufficient to deal with such powerful foes. They will be forced to abandon their magic and flee, or risk capture or death in the process. Thus, the Hakima of Afar need the assistance of heroes, someone to intercept the Grendel force and either turn them back or slow them sufficiently that they have time to complete their working. Game information. Feroz. The Grendel now control Feroz. It is no longer an imperial territory. Among other things, they have also finally sent forces to capture the Celesti Lighthouse. The mariner's manor it used to provide is no longer available to the Celesti Lighthouse keeper. Major conjunctions of the Sentinel Gate have been identified that would allow travel to Afaryase. According to the civil service, either conjunction would allow Imperial heroes to intercept the Grendel force moving across the plains. Scouts from the 7th Wave report that each night when the Grendel camp, they throw up a temporary stockade, breaking it down each morning before moving on. The conjunctions would allow the Empire to attack while they are still encamped. The Highborn scouts also report that the stockade appears to partly be for the security of a high-ranking orc of some kind, not the military commander, but possibly an important advisor. The full scope of the magic the Hakima of Afar are planning to unleash is not entirely clear. Night magic is not destructive in nature. From the description of the contractual debts owed to them, the Hakima believe that thousands of Kohan, corsairs, and soldiers of many nations will be drawn to Feroz to fight alongside the armies in the coming season, provided the Grendel can be turned aside. The magic must be performed at Afar, where the Hakima's store of contracts is kept, and if they are forced to flee, they will have to abandon their library of debts, as well as their homes.